Hello guys, the video that you're about to hear, some may not like it. Remember, it does not apply to everyone. A habit that a lot of people have is that they listen, they get triggered, they're upset, they see the title, they type before they listen. If you're typing before you listen to this and listen to this in its entirety, you're already failing. Because a lot of times you're going to say something and you're going to make a point that is probably going to be touched on later on. So I'll say, consider listening to it in its entirety, or just don't listen to it at all if it's going to bother you. This is nothing against Black people. I am Black and I love Black people. Love you guys so much. But I must speak the truth because that is also love. All right, guys. Bye. Hello guys, welcome to my channel. I hope you guys are having a wonderful day. Thank you so much for stopping by. Thank you for choosing my channel. I'm thankful to all of you who are new to my channel, who are new subscribers, and I'm also thankful to those of you who have been here. I appreciate those of you who reach out to me, those of you who comment below, those of you who are silent observers. I ask each and every one of you for your prayers each and every day. It is needed. I can't tell you enough how much it is needed in the journey. It's not often, and it's not necessarily that there's anything major going on. But as we know, the enemy comes to kill, steal, and to destroy. And he never sleeps. And he's always planning. And we are but flesh. And there is power in prayer. And there's power in collective prayer. So I ask you guys for that. And however you're led to pray for me, I would appreciate it very much. So I want to speak to you all about something that's been in my spirit, and I've spoken about this before. And in this message, I want to talk to Black people, people of color. If you're not Black, it doesn't mean turn it off and not listen. Please listen. I want y'all to understand, guys, that a time of reckoning is coming. A time of reckoning is coming. I am asking you, as people of color, Black people, to really look around you. I want you to ask God to open your eyes and to guide you and to show you truth. Because if you're following a group of people in a certain direction, and that group is teaching you to hate people, and it's teaching you to be bitter and to seek revenge, and to say, you've done this to us, I am trying to tell you there are going to be some consequences. Because a lot of times, this sort of mindset does not come from a place that is pure, but it comes from a place that's from hate and bitterness. And anything that is birthed in, steeped in, stoked with hate is not of God. When you begin to hate people and dislike people and you go against people based on the color of their skin, you are bringing back, and you are now doing to them the things that were done to your forefathers, the things that were done to your ancestors, those before you, because none of you, most of you, have never experienced that. A reckoning will come. And I'm not telling you this because I'm just telling you a fairy tale. Depending on where you are in the world, you need to understand your history in terms of how easy it is to declare a certain group, a certain nationality, a certain race to be public enemy number one. You need to understand that it is not a hard thing to identify a group of people as a threat, as a problem, and see people turn against you. Have you ever been at work or been in a situation where somebody just made up something about you or said something about you, wasn't even true, and you saw people just turn on you? It could be not necessarily even people of a different race. It could be people of the same race, people in the same household. Someone just said something about you and they just automatically believed it and they went along with it and they start to treat you different and they didn't invite you anymore. Some people, depending on how serious it is, it caused some sort of altercation, whether it was verbal or physical. Some people have lost their lives. Maybe there's some of you, you know people who have lost their lives because somebody said something that wasn't even true. They didn't get the whole story. Someone lost their lives behind that. Understand that these things can happen. If you're living in America, it's very easy for certain things to happen. You must know the history of America. You must know that even if it is a wonderful country with many opportunities, there is history here. There were camps where the Japanese were kept when Pearl Harbor was bombed. The president at the time declared that, hey, all Japanese needs to be placed in these camps. They need to be separated from the rest of us. We don't know. They could be a threat too. Even though some of them were Japanese who were born here. They were of Japanese descent. A lot of them had nothing to do with what happened in Pearl Harbor, but they were identified as Japanese. You need to understand how the Chinese were building the railroads. It wasn't just black people on there. There's people of different races building the railroads. How they were treated, how the Polish were treated. A lot of times as people of color, you only focus on your history and what happened to you. Do you know about the things that happened to other people? Other races? Some very horrible things that's taken place. Do you understand the things that's happened in America? Do you understand how America came to be? Do you understand that Native Americans were here first? Christopher Columbus didn't discover this place. It was already discovered. There were people already living here. Matter of fact, he didn't even realize he was in America. It was when Amerigo Vespucci, I think, he's the one that realized that Christopher Columbus thought he was in the island somewhere because of the way the color of the Native Americans, their darker skin. That's how this country became called America, because of Amerigo, who discovered it. But the Native Americans were already here. But the Europeans, when they came, the Native Americans, I'm sure there were some that didn't trust them, but someone had to decide to override that and say, hey, let's teach them and welcome them. The brutal winters were very difficult for white people. They did not know how to grow things. They did not understand the land. The Native Americans helped them, taught them how to farm, about squash and corn and beans, all the things that they needed to survive. And once they learned that, because a lot of them, they would have gone back or froze to death, Then they stayed, and then things got worse. And instead of sharing the land, the Europeans wanted more land, and they kept taking it and pushing the Native Americans further back and saying, okay, this is all we want. And then when they want to expand more, they push them back. No, we want this land too. And they kept doing that and doing it. And then they send them here. And when the Native Americans were resisting, they decided they're going to capture them and take over because, of course, the Europeans had more advanced weapons. And so they had to walk on what they know as the Trail of Tears, where a lot of people died. And so they moved them off to, I can't recall where, and they were like, okay, you can have this area. We're not going to bother you anymore. And so the Native Americans reluctantly went there. Keep in mind, they had the freedom of this entire country. And they are constantly being moved further and further away. And they kept moving, and they lost people, and a lot of their men died because the Europeans brought these blankets and these things and gave them sicknesses and all of that. Some people say it was done on purpose, but we don't know for sure. But kept moving them. Then they were like, we want this land too. And so the Native Americans held their ground and said no. And then when an order was sent to kill all the buffaloes, which was it was basically the staple. It was a necessity for them. A lot of things have happened. You can look through and see history. Mountains and mountains of dead buffaloes to get rid of the Native Americans. And tell them they can't fish in certain areas. They would fish and get salmon and all of that. And it was a mess. They were being arrested. Why am I telling Black people these things? You're not the only one that's been through stuff. Indians are on reservations. They're in these places. And they have these lands that's just for them per se. But it's not what they would have wanted. They were sort of sent there, and they still experience stuff. As Black people, getting a whole lot more than what they're getting. And I'm going to explain a few things to you. And you consider yourself to be a perpetual victim. You may say that's not what it is. That's not what it is. You're going to see a change that's going to come at some point. Things will change. It does not matter what kind of money you have. It does not matter what your wealth is. None of that matters. Your money as a Black person, our money being accepted, the opportunities you have to be able to walk into a bank and get credit and loans. Those things are by the grace of God, because in reality, if this change were to happen, your money will not matter. These people will not take your money. It will be an insult. Your money is not a necessity. They will find other ways. Even your liquor store, you're going to say the liquor store, the hair store, the weed store. We're living in times where if they decide that they are going to make Black people or declare Black people as enemies, they're going to compensate these corner stores and all this stuff in some way so that there's not a thing where they're losing money. Because we do know that if you go into Black neighborhoods, well, certain areas, you're going to see there's always a liquor store, chicken shop, all these places, loan places with crazy high interest rates are in these places. But the truth of the matter is, The freedoms that's been given to Black people has been given to us by the grace of God. The courageous men and women of the past who fought, depending on what country you're from, depending on where you were raised, depending what continent, where did you come from? Those who were brave enough, kings, queens, warriors, all of that, abolitionists, slaves, these people were raised up by God. The Moses that brought out the children of Israel, that brought them out from Pharaoh, they were raised up by God to bring them out by his grace. And then when they get their freedoms, it's by God's grace that they're now able to trade and live and support themselves and support their families, and are able to have commerce and all of that. But see, just very similar to the children of Israel, who they get to their land or they get to this place and they begin to behave a certain way. Maybe they choose other gods. Maybe they begin to have doubts in God. Maybe they begin to curse God. They begin to feel sorry for themselves. They're complaining about a lot of things. Then sometimes they find themselves dealing with certain consequences. They find themselves losing things. They find themselves being in a place of stagnation and loss and despondence for some time. And what I need Black people to understand, and I'm not talking about white people, because something that I notice Black people like to do, you talk to them about stuff. Well, what about white people? I'm talking about you. I'm talking about you right now. Black skin holds little worth in almost the entire planet. I'm not saying that you should think of yourself as less than. I'm not saying that. Because this hatred, it's unwarranted. It's unjustified. But a lot of times the behaviors will cause people to think this way. If you look at the news and you see a lot of Black people doing a lot of negative things, but at the same time, very little is shown about the positive things that a lot of Black people are doing. There are lots of Black people, they'll give you highlights quarterly or periodically, once or twice a year, you see something great, and then you never hear about it again. But the majority of the time, you're going to see something negative. What it is a constant is that you're always going to see positive images about white people. It's so much that when you do see the crimes and the things that they do, or a white person has done this or that, you still equate success with them, because you'll say, yeah, they're crazy, they do this stuff, but you're still going to equate success with them, because you think the two go together in some cases, right? Well, what people will always look at and think of, because there's so little that is shown in the media, in the news, on purpose, because what we see in the media and the news, it is all controlled. Sound bites and how things are presented, it is all controlled to give a specific message. You need to understand that. If you're always going to see more negative things about Black people, that's going to make you think, oh, well, I know that's not true. I know that not all Black people are loud and violent. I have 3 brothers, okay? I grew up with my mother and my father. I've never heard a curse word in my house. My father's never used profanity to me. I've never heard him use profanity to my mother or to one another. They've never spoken to us in this way. I get around my cousins, big family. You're not in the house hearing any cursing and stuff going on. Now, I can't say maybe what they may say when they get around their friends. I don't know. But even when my friends, my older cousins, when their friends came over, I wasn't sitting there hearing a bunch of cursing. But media will not show that side. Okay? When you think about, and I have not lost the message here, I need you to follow. When you see things about Africa, they show you people in the bush naked with their butt out, toasted by the sun with spears. And so that's what you see. But no, it is not this way. Or we may see the parts of Africa where there's a lot of violence. I'm sure this happens, but there's a message that's being put in our minds. I'm sure there may be some truth to certain aspects of it, but the truth of the matter is that African people, a lot of them, they own a lot of things. They have big, beautiful houses. I didn't notice until I started watching, what do you call those things? Nollywoods? I was watching Nollywood. I think my mom introduced that to me like years ago. I don't watch it as much as I used to. I was like, what? I had these big old houses, nice things. And then, of course, I start to explore and just watch documentaries and see that it's wealthy people with beautiful homes. And their mannerisms, their classiness is very different. The way they conduct themselves, the way the women, the men conduct themselves, the way the family get together, the way they put themselves together, their weddings, it's elaborate, it's beautiful. But what do we see? The man with the toasted butt cheeks hunting down whatever's out there to eat. And such a group exists. And there's nothing wrong with that. They know how to survive, but there is a message that's always sent. My point is that the image that's always being reflected in the media about Black people, and then you add like the music where the N-word is just like supposedly a term of endearment, which is nonsense. It's not. You ask the slaves from back in the days, which I find a lot of people that want to talk about slavery and my forefathers and what y'all did, and you use the word that the slave master gives to them and try to make it into something and buy music with it, rather than hold one another accountable and say, we're not going to use this word. You're going to use it and say, well, we're going to say it's something different. Guys, that is stupidity. It is ignorance. It is a dog going back to its vomit. You're trying to repackage that nonsense and call it something different. Use that word more than a white person. I've heard that word more among Black people than I have ever heard it among any white person. Okay? So the stereotypes, right? Through the movies. Okay, the movies, what's going on? People are loud, the stereotypes being pushed and all of that. I hear people saying, well, the movies and the rapping and all that, it's the white man. No white man is forcing any Black person to do that. They're just offering them some cash, and that Black person saying, okay, I'm going to do it. One thing about Black people, you're not going to force them. We're naturally strong-willed and strong-minded. But if there's not a loyalty, if you don't have principles, you're going to take the money and go and make excuses. So with the movies and all of that, and the images that's being shown on the news and very little positivity, this is what's going to make it easy that if Black people are declared to be a menace and a threat, it's going to be very easy to be rounded up and put away. You think it can happen? Absolutely it can. Please don't ever let your wealth or where you are or the things that you are able to say and do freely make you feel like things can never change. Yes, it can. Because humans are changeable. The Bible says the heart of man is desperately wicked. Who shall know it? And you must know that you are living in times where someone can come into power at some point and say Black people are a danger. They will justify it by the behaviors that we're seeing right now. Freedoms are being used to abuse, to get vengeance, to be racist back, to be hateful back. To be bigots back. That's all that's happening. A lot of times it's not about sitting down and showing a better understanding, as I said in past videos. A lot of times Black people, specifically Black Americans, in my opinion, are always talking about slavery and always talking about what they didn't get because they don't know anything else about themselves. They know nothing of their culture, their background. They only identify as slaves. They know nothing of their history because they don't want to sit and read and find out their lineage and where they're from and all of that. A lot of times they don't have the resources. Too busy working, surviving, struggling. Blaming someone for things. Whatever, as I've said in past videos, what is the excuse? You can't say, oh, we're not getting opportunities. There are plenty of other Black Americans who have succeeded, who were poor, who had very little. Some had more than others, but they're successful and they're doing well. So y'all gotta miss me with that one. It's a choice. Then there's people who is blacker than Darth Vader, darker and blacker than Darth Vader, that comes from third world countries, refugees, all of that, and we're living in whatever those places are, and they were working, washing dishes, and having to work hard on a visa, and until they could become citizens, and sleeping on hard floors, and being mistreated, and wearing shoes that were too big or too small, and a jacket that was too thin in the winter, and they made it, and now they're owning restaurants and things. What is your problem? It's not the color of your skin. But as long as you continue this attack, and you forget your God, and as long as you use hatred and malice and vengeance and even jealousy in some cases as a weapon, it's going to come back in a bad way. It's going to turn. Your money, you could be LeBron James, you could be whoever, you could be the richest person. When this change comes, even that person, it won't matter, because there is a disdain for the Black skin. How dare you be able to afford this? Your money means nothing here. Do you hear me? Your money means nothing here. That time can come. Your education means nothing. You are Black. Your abilities means nothing here. You think it can't happen? Watch your history. It happens all the time. It's just that a lot of times people are so focused on your little space, your zip code, what's going on in your block. There are people all over the world who are experiencing that. And America, as wonderful as this country is, has scary history here. At present, there are laws that if you don't identify certain people by certain pronouns, the way that you could go to jail, you can lose your job. What am I saying? The point I'm making is laws that you think would never come into effect or things you think could never happen can happen. And right now, white people are being demonized because the powers that be, the top 1%, for whatever reason, this needs to happen because there is an agenda. But if you as black people step out of the will of God and keep playing this little game, if you don't understand, and if you are allowing yourself to be moved by your emotions and by what you feel, and you get on this and you're going to start to type it, you're going to see how it's going to affect you. You may not see it, but it may come down to your children, somewhere down in your lineage. What I want you guys to understand as I interject here is that despite what the top 1% may be doing and whatever their plans may be for this time, you use it wisely. This is not the time to be mad and spilling out vitriol and saying, I want reparations, you want all these things. If you want reparations, start in Africa, because that's where Africans were sold. This is how black people ended up here. But regardless of that, you have to think of this. Remember Joseph, who was sold by his brothers into Egypt. This is a perfect example. And when he was sold by his brother, regardless of whatever happened to him over those years, he continued to behave himself wisely. He did not go with a chip on his shoulder. He did not go with a victim mentality, even though he may have felt or had bad days. But he continued to perform well. And in doing so, he ended up being second in command to the Pharaoh. And what you have to understand is this time that you may have, it is not a time to squander, and it's not a time to act out. But think of ways to improve yourself, and think of ways that you can improve your community. Think of things such as, why should we all be called African Americans or Asian Americans? Why are Americans not simply called Americans? Why must there be this divide? Do you not understand why that was put in place to begin with? You can be asking about things about the schools, changing the textbooks, where the textbooks have more history about successful black people, successful Asian people, successful Jewish people. Learn more about different cultures where you're not just seeing black people as slaves and just one thing about Frederick Douglass. Learning more about your cultural backgrounds, asking for improvements in the school, better textbooks, better teachers, more experienced teachers. There are a wealth of things that you can ask for, but the truth of the matter is a lot of times black people know nothing more beyond victimhood. Where there's a change. And the way that it will work, it's not every black person will be rounded up. There will be some splitting up. I said that before. And it's going to be easy to do because black people often attack black people, the other black people. Look, black people that often think outside the box, who, ooh, it's about to rain. I love rain, guys. You hear the lightning? I hear the thunder. I love it. Black people who are able to think what y'all will call sellouts. What some people will call sellouts. You know, the black person that sometimes people didn't accept them. They don't understand why they listen to different types of music. The black person that they did well, maybe they try to stay in their neighborhood, they try to stay in their community, but they either would have the crabs environmental mentality or they just would not accept them or whatever the case may be. There's going to be something in some way that there's going to be some sort of, it wouldn't be a board. I don't know how to explain it. We don't ever want to be a us against them. But I'm telling you all that when you live a life where you're hating, it's going to come back to you. When you live a life where you are vengeful, it's going to come back to you. If you sow with hate, you're going to get hate back. You sow with racism, it's going to come back. You sow with animosity, you're going to get it back. Being loud and ignorant, you're going to get it back when the laws and the tables are changed. And when these laws come, I have told people this before. A lot of times people, black people, you may think, oh, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. No, you're not. Because a lot of you are afraid to die. You don't have courage. You have a loud mouth, but you don't have courage. It's in there somewhere, but you don't have courage. You may be bullies, some, but you don't have courage. There's a difference between being a bully and having courage. You can speak and say what you need to say without trying to put fear in someone else. You don't have courage because a lot of times you stand by and you watch certain things happen. There are countries, there's certain things it's not going to happen. Regardless of who is doing it, if you're hurting a woman or a child, the men going to come. They're going to step in regardless of who you are. Regardless of what even position or office you hold. If you're doing something wrong to a kid or you're handling someone wrong, even another man, they're going to come in and step in for you. Black people kind of don't really do that a lot. Let's be honest. So that time that will come, if certain things don't stop, you're not going to change. You will not do anything because you don't want to die. There may be a few who has that type of heart. You will follow that line and rally up where you need to. And it is not hard to do. It is not hard to gain control and get control of any group of people in this country if we get orders that comes down from the President of the United States that's approved and comes down, guys. And it's declared that you're a problem and you're a menace. And these are safety measures and safeguards. I'm telling you about these buzzwords. And you know what? People are going to sign off on it because y'all already getting on their nerves. The things that you're doing now, they'll recall everything. They'll recall it. Well, look what they did. We were so nice to them. The top 1%, the group that has the power, they'll be there showing you. And let me tell you, no one has more power than the Lord. But when you're out of the will of God and you start walking in your own power and doing what you want to do, these people is going to they will have power over you. The Bible says our battle is not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers and the rulers of the darkness of this world and spiritual wickedness in high places. Because there is a hierarchy, but people are used and put in these positions. So they're going to point out and show how Black people were acting up, who got fired, who did what, the tax on this person, that person, and it's going to be put in this way. It's going to make sense. And people say, yes, this makes sense. It's for their good. It's not going to be about destroying you. It's not going to be about enslavement. It's not going to bring you and make you slaves, even though you must understand, I've said this before, slavery ended with a pen. Do you not understand this? Slavery ended with a group of who? Not Black people. White people got together. How did slavery end? Not with any Black people fighting, but white people. The Confederates and the, can't think of them. I'm having a brain fart. Against the Union. Why is my brain doing what it's doing? Okay, anywho. Guess what? Stop. That battle. The North did not want South. The North did not want slaves. The South did. And then there was a civil war. That's what it was all about. But slavery ended with a signature. And there could be changes. They won't call it slavery, it'll be something else. It can change with a pen and some votes again. And you may think it's not possible, but the way Black people are behaving and that they've gone out of the will of God and they're doing this hateful stuff, it can happen. It can happen. It won't be slavery. It's going to be something else. And it's going to say it's for your good. It's for reform. We're hoping that through this program, that they will be able we're hoping to be able to get them back on the right track so we can, again, reintegrate them into society again. Keep playing. Keep thinking it won't happen. Keep thinking, having it in your mind that, oh, no one would approve this. Yes, they would, because there's a lot of people who hate Black people. There's a lot of people who they're tired of the special favors. There's a lot of people who's tired of the moaning and the groaning. Now we've got the Black national anthem that needs to be played. Well, why? Some of you might unsubscribe, but for what? Well, what about somebody else who have another national anthem? We could have a long line. What if there's a Mexican? What if there's Native Americans? Maybe there's other people that feel like their stuff needs to be in. Why are you special that you get that? It is creating segregation, people. I'm not being funny. You're reintegrating segregation. You may say, no, we just want our own. That is segregation. What people of color need to understand is that God's grace and mercy, his move What he has done for us is what allows us to be able to have the freedom of speech, the freedom to buy, to sell, to own, to walk, to talk, to speak, to do the things we do, to have a home, to be able to integrate with anyone despite their race and color is because of him. And far be it from me to decide that I now want to take my freedom and use it to oppress and to get back at others and treat them the way that perhaps their forefathers treated my ancestors. Because in doing so, I then force the hand of God to go against me. So keep going, keep doing it. There's people that say, oh, we're so glad women of color and we're, being black. But y'all will have a fit if someone say, I'm so glad I have my white sister sitting here. Why can't white people say that? But you can say what you want to say. You cannot have that type of control over people. It is sinful. You have to understand that. And God created white people as well. He created all people. And the Bible says, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whosoever believes in him. He didn't say whosoever except white people or whosoever except for Asian people. So if he died for all, if we mistreat people, if we're unkind to people, if we slap bread out of the mouth of somebody, God is not pleased with it. And please understand that the grace and the mercies that those before us were given to be free and to be given opportunities to work and to build houses and homes and to have freedom. And as it continues to progress to when we are born, don't ruin it. Don't ruin it. There are things you can speak up about, but a lot of people are not educated enough, or you're so full of hate. It's not about even trying to live peaceably. You want revenge. Right now, people are afraid to hire black people. They see a little brown face, they be like, no. Why? Because they know you're going to be on here calling up Al Sharpton when you're late. Oh, no, it's because I'm black. No one got time for that. You're closing doors for your children. You're shooting yourselves in the foot. Freedoms and the opportunities that you have came by the grace and the mercies of God. You are placed here for a purpose. Discover your purpose. Walk in that. Break generational curses. You are responsible. No one is responsible for the things that happened from the past. You are not going to blame white people today for the things that happened in the past with people who died years ago. Otherwise, we should be holding you hostage or holding you responsible for your thieving uncle and your whatever your aunts did who was off squeezing the children and touching the little girls in the past. Should we do that? People need to understand, if you go back in your past as a black person, see, a lot of times black people don't do that. Who is in your past? Who is in your present right now? Who is in your present right now that you know that's been to jail for certain things, who have done certain things? Should you be blamed for them? Losers make excuses and blame others for it. You see? That's what failures do. You have to see what's before you, see where the shortcomings are, and do what you can do. It is not your color. It is not the white man, because there are a lot of black people who's making it. Yes, there's discrimination. All this stuff happens, but they're making it and they're doing well. And then a lot of you will have the crab in the barrel mentality and pull those black people down. and do all this stuff. They try to stay in the neighborhoods with you, and you kill them off. You trying to get stuff for free in their businesses. You steal. You do all this stuff. You mistreat them. You make them feel bad for having different tastes in music and things of that nature. You tell them they're trying to be white because they speak proper English and all these different things. So they end up having to go further away where they are accepted. And then you call them sellouts because they got married. They got married to somebody who's not black. They would have married somebody black maybe, but y'all always bothering them. They have no obligation to stick with you because you're black. They don't want to sit here and be bitter with you. That is hatred. That is what hatred does. It makes you bitter. It makes you malicious. It makes you vengeful. It makes you ugly. It's time for growth, people. And just understand that every opportunity that you have comes from God. And when you stray from Him, and when you want to get revenge, you're going to see how everything's going to come tumbling down. And those of you right now, excuse me guys, my tummy's rumbling. And those of you right now, you're in those groups and you're just hating and you're attacking white people. And it's a miserable feeling. It's not the white people messing up your neighborhoods. It wasn't the white people beating you half to death. Black people still beating their children like they're slaves. Leaving marks on their children, black and blue, they can't go to school. Who did that? Was it a white person? You hearing people hollering and screaming? Who's doing that? The white person? Who put those foil papers in your windows? The white person? No. There's something on the inside that needs to come out that's been passed down from generation to generation through abuse, through neglect, through irresponsibility, through you listening to those before you talking about the white man and who did whatever. How many white men you actually see in your neighborhoods? Who is there blowing somebody's dome out? You see brain matter on the floor. Very rarely is it the white man who's teasing you at school and calling you black, or calling you, teasing you, making you feel bad because you're mixed, and they don't like you because you're light skinned, and they don't like you because your mama black and your father's white, or your father's white or your mama's white and your father's white, and they make fun of you and they pull your hair and they do that. Who is pinching you? Was it the white kid or was it the black kid in your school? Who is telling you horrible things about yourself that you're not going to be nobody? White teacher or the black teacher? I mean, sometimes, yeah, the white teacher can do it too, because there are stories about that. But I need black people to be real. So you come out hardened and you practice displacement. You need to blame somebody, but you're not bold enough to face the ones who hurt you. Or you do, but you're still bleeding. You never heal, so you bleed over everybody. You owe me, you owe me. Leave those white people alone. They don't owe you nothing. You've never been on a plantation in your life. You have not picked nary one cotton. And some of y'all have cotton balls in your bathroom for your nails. Should we be offended? You only have one life to live. If you live it being hateful, you will shorten your life, because hatred and bitterness, it stresses you out. And you know what? It eats away at your brain. And that part of you, your frontal lobe, will become incapacitated. You'll no longer be able to reason properly. And your amygdala, that little tiny thing in the middle of your brain, the base somewhere, will just focus on things that's negative. You're always in this mode, and your brain will become diseased, and you make very poor choices. You know, people who end up going out there and taking out a bunch of people, their brain becomes diseased. Things happen to them. They think on it. They meditate on it. Their hearts get cold. They play certain things over in their heads over and over again of how they see things, how they view the world. And their brain, the reasoning, the parts of their brain, their spatial thinking is gone. It stops working because you're feeding your brain negativity. And the part of you that will have empathy and understanding, it's gone because your heart is cold. And you think you're fine, but when people see you, you just look like this hollowed out cyborg just giving trouble. You see it all the time. This is how you see people who are supposedly successful and on these platforms. And when you see that racism comes out, because that's what it is, you're a black racist. You see that stuff comes out. You see the way their lips curl, and they start to do this thing, and they start to laugh, and shame on you. Shame on you. Because these people who are supposedly successful and have all the schooling in college, they revert back to the same little petty games and the tit for tat back and forth word game that they played when they were like, I don't know, 20. The things that they did to survive when they were telling your mama jokes. They never matured. The Word of God says, if God be for us, who can be against us? If God is not with you, many will be against you. And understand, when this time changes, all the allowances that are being made for Black people right now is because there is a reason for it. But that will change. And when the tables are turned, or when someone goes too far and bites the hand accidentally, there will be consequences. And that's when there will be laws and things written, and the verbiage of such that's going to be, they need help. This is a search and rescue. We need intervention. We're trying to help them, but they need guidance. And it's going to happen. Because when you walk with the enemy and you play with his vices and you use his tactics to hurt other people, then what the Word of God says must come into fruition in your life, which is what you sow, you shall now reap. All right, guys, God bless.